The global elite know what's holding back the Antichrist, and they're targeting it. Picture this. One of the most brilliant minds in Silicon Valley, a man who co-founded PayPal, made the first major investment in Facebook, and built Palantir into a multi-billion-dollar surveillance empire, stands before an audience at Cambridge University and says something that should terrify every person on Earth. We should be way more worried about the Antichrist, because no one's worried about it. He's built the very technologies that governments use to monitor their citizens, and he's warning us that we're walking straight into the most sophisticated trap in human history. But here's what will shock you about his warning. He's not talking about some distant religious prophecy. He's talking about political and technological forces that are converging right now, in real time, using a biblical concept that explains exactly how the world will submit to totalitarian control. The concept is called the Catacon. In Greek, it means the restrainer. And what if a man who wrote about this pattern 2,000 years ago understood exactly how it would unfold? The Apostle Paul wrote about forces that restrain evil and chaos, but he also warned that those restraining forces would eventually be taken out of the way. And when that happens, he said, "Then shall that wicked be revealed." Peter Thiel believes we're living through that removal right now. And if he's right, what comes next will make every dystopian novel look like a children's fairy tale. To understand what Peter Thiel is really warning us about, we need to go back 2,000 years to a mysterious passage written by the Apostle Paul. In his second letter to the Thessalonians, Paul wrote about the end times. He described a coming figure called the man of sin, or the son of perdition, what we now call the Antichrist. But Paul said, this figure couldn't be revealed yet, because something was holding him back. And now ye know what withholdeth, that he might be revealed in his time. For the mystery of iniquity doth already work. Only he who now letteth will let, until he be taken out of the way. The Greek word Paul used was Catacon, the restrainer, something or someone that holds back chaos, prevents the rise of ultimate evil, maintains order, and prevents the collapse of civilization. Some said it was the Roman Empire. Others said it was the Catholic Church. Some believed it was individual Christian leaders or institutions. But Peter Thiel says something interesting. He understands that the Catacon isn't just one thing. It's a principle. It's any force, political, technological, cultural, spiritual, that restrains the concentration of power and prevents totalitarian control. The Roman Empire served as Catacon by maintaining order and allowing Christianity to spread. Democratic institutions serve as Catacon by distributing power and preventing tyranny. Free markets serve as Catacon by decentralizing economic control. But here's the terrifying part of Paul's prophecy. The restrainer will be taken out of the way. And when that happens, then shall that wicked be revealed, whom the Lord shall consume with the spirit of his mouth, and shall destroy with the brightness of his coming. Peter Thiel believes we're living through the systematic removal of every major restraining force in our civilization. But to understand how this removal is actually taking place, we need to examine the single most important year in human history. The year when genuine existential risk became possible for the first time. The year everything changed. The 6th of August, 8:15 a.m., Hiroshima, Japan. For the first time in human history, a single weapon destroyed an entire city in seconds. 3 days later, Nagasaki was obliterated. Within months, it became clear that human beings had finally developed the ability to destroy their own species, and almost immediately, the political implications became obvious. In 1946, just 1 year after Hiroshima, the Federation of American Scientists produced a short film called One World or None. The message was simple and terrifying. Nuclear weapons make world government necessary. Either humanity unites under a single global authority, or humanity destroys itself. The film opens with footage of nuclear explosions. The narrator explains how these weapons could destroy civilization. And then comes the inevitable conclusion. There is no defense against atomic weapons except through the prevention of war. And the prevention of war demands the renunciation of force by all nations. In other words, world government or extinction. One world or none. This wasn't presented as a choice between good and evil. It was presented as a choice between survival and annihilation. Who could argue against survival? But Peter Thiel recognized something profound about this framing. The atheist philosophical framing is one world or none, he said, and global destruction. But here's what will shock you about what's happened since 1945. Every major crisis has been used to justify more centralized control. Every threat has been used to argue for less human freedom. And the very technologies we've built to protect ourselves have become the tools of our own surveillance and control. The Catacon hasn't just been weakened. Peter Thiel believes that he has identified the exact mechanism by which the Antichrist will take power. And it's not through conquest, charisma, or supernatural deception. It's through offering protection from genuine threats. The slogan of the Antichrist is peace and safety, Thiel explained, referencing 1 Thessalonians 5-3. For when they shall say, peace and safety, then sudden destruction cometh upon them, as travail upon a woman with child, and they shall not escape. But here's the crucial insight. In our modern world, peace and safety doesn't just mean freedom from war. It means protection from existential risks that could destroy civilization itself. Nuclear weapons that could end civilization in an afternoon. These aren't imaginary threats. They're real risks that require real solutions. But notice something absolutely crucial about every proposed solution. They all require more centralized control. Climate change? We need global carbon monitoring, international enforcement mechanisms, and worldwide coordination of energy policy. Who provides that? A global authority. Nuclear weapons? We need international oversight of all nuclear technology, global monitoring of weapons programs, and worldwide enforcement of non-proliferation. Who enforces that? A global authority. Do you see the pattern? Every existential risk, no matter how different it appears on the surface, demands the same solution. More global governance, more international coordination, more worldwide monitoring, more centralized control. The default political solution people have for all these existential risks is one world governance, Thiel observed. What do you do about nuclear weapons? We have a United Nations with real teeth that controls them. What do we do about AI? We need global compute governance. We need a one-world government to control all the computers, log every single keystroke to make sure people don't program a dangerous AI. And here's what makes this so seductive. These aren't obviously evil proposals. They sound reasonable responsible, even necessary. Who wants nuclear war? Nobody. Who wants runaway AI? Nobody. Who wants climate catastrophe? Nobody. So when someone offers to protect you from these threats, it feels like salvation, not enslavement. But think about what these solutions actually require. Global carbon monitoring means tracking and controlling every aspect of human economic activity. Global AI governance means monitoring every computer, every algorithm, every line of code. Global health surveillance means tracking every person's medical status, travel, and social contacts. Global nuclear oversight means controlling every nation's energy and defense policies. Add them all together, and you get a system of total surveillance and control that would make every historical dictatorship look primitive by comparison. And it's all justified by the promise of peace and safety. But there's something even more disturbing about this pattern that most people miss. Here's where Peter Thiel's warning becomes deeply personal. The man warning us about technological control helped build the very systems that make that control possible. Thiel co-founded PayPal, which pioneered digital financial surveillance. He was the first major investor in Facebook, which became one of the largest data collection operations in human history. He built Palantir into a multi-billion-dollar company that helps governments track and monitor their citizens. When asked about this apparent contradiction, Thiel didn't dodge the question. Look, there are all these different scenarios. I obviously don't think that that's what I'm doing. But then, he made a crucial point. You can't just retreat to a monastery. This is the dilemma of our time. The same technologies that enable freedom also enable control. The internet that allows you to access information also allows governments to monitor your activities. The smartphones that connect you to the world also track your every movement. The artificial intelligence that could solve humanity's greatest problems could also replace human decision-making entirely. We're trapped in what Thiel calls a technological double-bind. We need technology to solve the problems that technology created. But every technological solution creates new problems that require more technological solutions. Consider artificial intelligence. AI could revolutionize medicine, education, and scientific research. It could eliminate poverty, solve climate change, and extend human lifespans. But it could also eliminate jobs, concentrate power, and make human beings obsolete. So, what's the proposed solution? More AI to control AI. Global AI governance systems that use artificial intelligence to monitor artificial intelligence development. Meta-surveillance systems that watch the surveillance systems. Each layer of technological control justified by the need to control the previous layer. It's not random. It's not accidental. It's the inevitable result of what happens when you try to solve human problems through purely technological means. One of the key failures of totalitarianism in the 20th century was it had a problem of knowledge, Thiel explained. It couldn't know what was going on all over in the world. So you need the AI, or whatever else, to be capable of helping the peace and safety totalitarian rule. Think about what that means. Previous dictatorships failed because they couldn't monitor and control everyone simultaneously. They didn't have the technological capability to implement total surveillance. We're building that capability right now, not because we want to create a dictatorship, but because we want to solve problems, prevent pandemics, fight climate change. But every solution we build makes the next level of control possible. And every level of control makes the next crisis more likely to be solved through even more control. We're not just building the infrastructure for the one-world state. We're building it while convincing ourselves we're doing it for good reasons. There are 10 prophetic consequences that will follow the complete collapse of restraint. Consequence number 1. The Antichrist will be revealed. And then shall that wicked be revealed. Right now, the Antichrist is hidden. He may be alive. He may already be rising through political or global systems, but he cannot fully emerge until the restraint is gone. The moment it collapses, he steps forward with peace, with promises, with deception, and the world will follow him. The restraint is the only thing standing between us and the rise of the most dangerous man in history. The Antichrist will come with counterfeit miracles, signs, and wonders so strong that many will believe he is a savior. Consequence number 2, global delusion will take over. God shall send them strong delusion that they should believe a lie. 2 Thessalonians 2:11. Once the restraint is removed, truth will vanish. Logic will crumble. Right and wrong will flip. And the masses will believe the lie. Not just a little lie. A massive deception that controls minds, media, politics, and religion. What lie could be so strong that people would choose it over truth even in the face of chaos? It won't feel like deception. It will feel like unity, progress, peace, until it's too late. Consequence number 3, the rise of the one-world religion. The Bible shows that a false prophet will rise alongside the Antichrist. He causeth the earth to worship the beast. Revelation 13:12. A new religion will spread, one that looks spiritual, one that sounds loving, one that includes everyone except the truth. It will demand loyalty. It will look peaceful on the outside, but it will be a trap for souls. This new religion won't deny God, it will redefine him. Major world leaders and religious figures are already calling for a global faith alliance to unite humanity under one spiritual umbrella. When restraint falls, worship won't disappear. It will be redirected. Consequence number 4. The mark of the beast system will begin. No man might buy or sell, save he that had the mark. Revelation 13:17. The mark becomes mandatory. You won't be able to buy food, pay rent, travel, or even work without full allegiance to the beast. Could the technology for this system already be in place? And are people already being conditioned to accept it? Biometric payment systems, digital IDs, and AI surveillance tools are already in development across every major continent. The mark won't start with force. It will start with fear, then control. Consequence number 5. Massive persecution of believers. They will stand alone. The Antichrist will hunt them. They will be arrested, beaten, killed. They love not their lives unto the death. Revelation 12:11. These believers will be bold, but they will suffer. Would you still follow Jesus if it cost you everything? Today, over 360 million Christians already live in places where persecution is severe. Imagine that. multiplied across every nation. When the restrainer is removed, the true cost of faith will be revealed. Consequence number 7. A global war unlike anything before. Nation shall rise against nation. Matthew 24-7. The Bible describes warfare that shakes the planet. Armies marching from the east, invasions into Israel, famines, plagues, and death. And without restraint, no nation will hold back. Nuclear weapons, bioweapons, drones, cyber attacks. The beast will thrive on war, and peace will vanish. Without the Holy Spirit's hand, Earth becomes a battlefield. From spiritual collapse to political collapse to global war. If you think war is scary now, this is the beginning of sorrows. Consequence number 8. The return of open satanic worship, and they worshipped the dragon. Revelation 13-4. Yes, that's in the Bible. When the restrainer is gone, Satan no longer hides. People won't just reject God. They will worship the beast. They will call evil good. They will celebrate what is cursed. Satanism will go mainstream. Occultism will be normal. What happens when darkness no longer has to pretend? When light leaves, shadows take center stage. What Trump just did might delay the beast system, but he can't stop it. With the stroke of a pen, Donald Trump signs an executive order that sends shockwaves through the global financial establishment. He bans central bank digital currencies in America, calling them a dangerous threat to freedom. But what if this isn't just politics? Let me show you exactly what Trump stopped. The Treasury Department was developing a framework for a digital dollar that would make China's digital yuan look like child's play. Every transaction recorded and analyzed, real-time flagging of prohibited purchases. But it gets worse. They weren't just planning to monitor your spending, they were planning to control it. This isn't speculation. This is exactly what programmable digital currencies can do. And the infrastructure was already being built. 2025, Oval Office. As Trump signs strengthening American leadership in digital financial technology, he doesn't just change policy, he potentially alters the prophetic timeline. Central bankers around the world watch in horror as their carefully constructed system hits an American roadblock. But here's what makes this moment even more significant. Trump doesn't just ban central bank digital currencies. He uses language that reveals he understands the spiritual dimensions of what he's fighting. Dangerous threat to freedom, government tyranny. Take money from people's accounts without their knowledge. This isn't just economic policy. This is spiritual warfare. Throughout history, America has served as a restraining force against global tyranny, and Trump's executive order continues that restraining role. But notice something crucial in the biblical prophecy. The restrainer will eventually be taken out of the way. This isn't permanent resistance. It's temporary delay serving divine purposes. Let me show you the immediate global reaction to Trump's intervention. The Federal Reserve called emergency meetings within hours of the executive order. International coordination calls with other central banks began immediately. Public statements defending CBDC necessity flooded financial media. The European Central Bank expressed deep concern about potential U.S. isolation from global financial systems. And here's what reveals the true nature of this system. Chinese officials actually celebrated Trump's CBDC ban, seeing it as an opportunity for China's digital yuan to dominate global digital currency adoption. Wall Street banks, which had spent billions preparing for CBDC integration, began intense lobbying campaigns. In a January speech in New Hampshire, Trump vowed to block the creation of a CBDC, calling it a dangerous threat to freedom and likening it to government tyranny. In a 2024 interview, he reiterated his concerns, labeling a CBDC as very dangerous and suggesting it could lead to money disappearing from accounts. He also expressed intentions to codify a CBDC ban into law. Trump signed an executive order which explicitly prohibits U.S. agencies from establishing, issuing, or promoting CBDCs, citing risks to financial stability, individual privacy, and U.S. sovereignty. The order also revoked President Biden's 2022 Executive Order 14067. In the Old Testament, God used rulers like Cyrus to accomplish his purposes and protect his people. Isaiah 45:1 calls Cyrus his anointed. Could Trump be serving a similar role? A flawed human instrument being used by God to delay the prophetic timeline and protect his people? Because while Trump has delayed the beast system, the Bible reveals how the globalists will ultimately work around American resistance, and it's more shocking than you think. However, even with Trump's efforts, there are 10 reasons the Antichrist will rise despite global resistance. Reason 1. Global instability creates desperation. The 15th of September, 2008, Lehman Brothers collapsed, and within hours, the global financial system nearly came to a complete halt. But what happened next should terrify anyone who understands prophecy. World leaders didn't just call for national solutions. They called for global coordination, global oversight, global financial systems, and millions of desperate people who had lost their homes, their savings, their futures. They supported it. Here's why this matters. Revelation 13:17 describes a time when no one can buy or sell except one who has the mark of the beast, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name. For centuries, people wondered how this could be possible. How could one person control the entire global economy? But 2008 showed us something crucial. When people are desperate enough, they'll accept any solution, even if it means giving up economic freedom. And here's what's happening right now that most people aren't paying attention to. We're transitioning to digital currencies and cashless payment systems faster than ever before. Central bank digital currencies, CBDCs, are being implemented in countries around the world. But this is just the beginning. Because economic desperation doesn't just make people accept financial control, it makes them crave strong leadership. And that brings us to something that's happening in politics right now that should alarm every person who understands prophecy. But before we explore that, you need to understand how the second reason is already reshaping reality itself. Reason 2, mass deception. In 2016, something unprecedented happened. For the first time in human history, information moved faster than truth. Social media algorithms could spread a lie to millions of people before fact-checkers could even identify it. But here's what most people missed. This wasn't just a technological shift. It was a prophetic fulfillment. And for this reason, God will send them strong delusion that they should believe the lie. Notice Paul doesn't say lies, plural. He says the lie, singular. There's a specific deception coming that will be so powerful, so compelling, that even those who know the truth will struggle to resist it. And now, we have technology that can create completely convincing videos of anyone saying anything. But here's the terrifying part. The same algorithms that spread misinformation today are already being used to shape political opinions, consumer behavior, and even religious beliefs. When the Antichrist appears, he won't need to convince people the old-fashioned way. The infrastructure for mass deception is already in place. The population is already conditioned to believe what they see on their screens, more than what they observe with their own eyes. And this connects directly to our third reason, which explains why even religious communities won't be able to resist. Because something has happened to the spiritual foundation of our civilization that most people don't want to acknowledge. Reason 3. Religious apostasy and spiritual vacuum. Here's a statistic that should alarm every Christian. In 1970, 90% of Americans identified as Christian. Today, that number has dropped to 65% and is falling rapidly. But the real crisis isn't the numbers, it's what's happening to those who remain. For the time will come when they will not endure sound doctrine, but according to their own desires, because they have itching ears, they will heap up for themselves teachers, and they will turn their ears away from the truth and be turned aside to fables. This isn't just about people leaving church. This is about the church itself abandoning biblical truth in favor of messages that make people feel good. Prosperity, gospel, universalism, the idea that all paths lead to God. And here's why this creates the perfect conditions for the Antichrist's rise. When people have been conditioned to prioritize feelings over truth, comfort over conviction, they become susceptible to any message that promises peace and prosperity. But there's something even more dangerous happening. The spiritual vacuum left by declining Christianity isn't staying empty. It's being filled by New Age spirituality, political ideologies treated as religion, and what psychologists call meaning-making systems that replace God with government, science, or social causes. When the Antichrist appears with signs and wonders, offering spiritual fulfillment and meaning, most people won't compare his message to biblical truth because they never learned biblical truth in the first place. And this connects directly to our fourth reason, which explains why global crises are actually accelerating his path to power. Reason 4. Desire for global unity amid crisis. Every major crisis in the last century has led to the same response: calls for greater global coordination. World War I led to the League of Nations. World War II led to the United Nations. The 2008 financial crisis led to calls for global financial regulation. And here's the pattern that should concern every student of prophecy. Each crisis makes national sovereignty seem outdated, and global governance seem necessary. But here's what most people don't realize. The Bible prophesies exactly this scenario. Revelation 13:7 says the beast was granted authority over every tribe, tongue, and nation. For centuries, this seemed impossible. How could one person rule the entire world? But we're watching the infrastructure for global governance being built right now. Global health organizations, global financial systems, global climate accords. And here's the crucial point. People aren't resisting this trend, they're demanding it. Every new crisis makes more people believe that only global solutions can solve global problems. When the Antichrist appears, he won't need to conquer nations one by one. The infrastructure for global rule will already exist, and desperate populations will hand him the keys willingly. But the technology to implement that control is advancing faster than most people realize. Which brings us to our fifth reason. Reason 5. Technological surveillance infrastructure. In China today, there are over 200 million surveillance cameras monitoring citizens' every move. Their social credit system tracks not just what people buy, but where they go, who they associate with, even what they say online. And if your score drops too low, you can't buy train tickets, get loans, or send your children to certain schools. But here's what's terrifying. This isn't just happening in China anymore. Similar systems are being implemented worldwide, often under the guise of convenience and security. Your smartphone tracks your location constantly. Your credit cards record every purchase. Your social media posts are analyzed by algorithms. And now we have the technology to consolidate all of this information into comprehensive profiles of every person on Earth. Facial recognition can identify you in crowds. Voice recognition can identify you on phone calls. Even your walking pattern can be used to identify you from satellite footage. But here's the prophetic significance. Revelation 13:16-17 describes a system where no one may buy or sell except one who has the mark of the beast. For centuries, people wondered how this could be implemented globally. Now we know, and the most disturbing part? Most people are accepting this voluntarily because it's convenient. They're trading freedom for efficiency, privacy for security, but the technology is only part of the problem. The deeper issue is cultural, which brings us to our sixth reason. Reason 6. Sinful world culture. Here's a question that reveals everything about our current moment. If someone asked you to define evil, could you give a clear, confident answer? Or would you say, well, it depends on the culture, the context, the circumstances. This shift from absolute to relative morality isn't just a philosophical debate, it's a prophetic development. When people no longer believe in absolute good and evil, they can't recognize absolute evil when it appears. Throughout history, the most evil regimes succeeded not because people actively supported evil, but because they had been conditioned to believe that moral judgments were subjective, that truth was relative. An entire generation has been trained to distrust their moral instincts. But here's the biblical warning. Isaiah 5:20 says, "Woe to those who call evil good and good evil, who put darkness for light and light for darkness." When the Antichrist appears performing signs and wonders, speaking of peace and unity, promoting tolerance and inclusion, most people won't have the moral framework to recognize that his message, however appealing, leads to destruction. They'll judge him by his apparent results, not his ultimate intentions, by his charisma, not his character, by his promises, not his prophetic identity. And this is directly connected to our seventh reason, which explains why those who could resist will be systematically silenced. Reason 7. Persecution eliminates opposition voices. Right now, as you're watching this documentary, Christians are being persecuted Over 340 million Christians worldwide face high levels of persecution and discrimination. But here's what's particularly significant. It's not just happening in traditionally hostile nations. Western countries are seeing increasing restrictions on religious expression, growing hostility toward biblical values, and what can only be described as systematic marginalization of Christian voices. In some countries, it's already illegal to share certain biblical teachings. In others, Christian businesses are being forced to participate in activities that violate their religious convictions. Social media platforms regularly censor Christian content while allowing anti-Christian content to flourish. But even those who aren't silenced will face a different kind of challenge. Which brings us to our eighth reason. Reason 8. False signs warns that the Antichrist's coming is according to the working of Satan, with all power, signs, and lying wonders. Notice it doesn't say fake signs and wonders, it says lying wonders. These will be real supernatural events, but they'll be used to support lies about who he is and what he represents. And here's what makes this particularly dangerous in our time. We've created a culture that values experience over truth, feelings over facts. People are more likely to believe something if it makes them feel good than if it's actually true. Jesus himself warned that these deceptions would be so convincing that, if it were possible, even the elect would be deceived. Matthew 24:24. The key phrase is, if it were possible. It suggests that even committed believers will find these deceptions challenging to resist. But the deception won't just be supernatural, it will be political. Which brings us to our ninth reason. Reason 9. Divine timing and prophetic inevitability. Here's the ultimate question that every person who studies prophecy must confront. If God has already determined that these events will happen, why should we try to prevent them? And if we can't prevent them, what's the point of resistance? The answer reveals something profound about the nature of prophecy itself. God doesn't predict the future, he declares it. And his declarations aren't just about what will happen, but about when it will happen. Daniel 9:24 provides a precise timeline for prophetic events, including the appearance of the Messiah and the coming of the Antichrist. It's not vague or symbolic, it's mathematically specific. But understanding divine timing doesn't make human choice irrelevant, it makes it supremely important. God's sovereignty doesn't eliminate human responsibility. It establishes the context within which human choices have eternal significance. Romans 8:28 promises that all things work together for good to those who love God, to those who are the called according to his purpose. This means that even the rise of the Antichrist, as terrible as it will be, serves God's ultimate purpose of bringing history to its appointed conclusion and establishing his eternal kingdom. So the question isn't whether we can prevent prophecy from being fulfilled. We can't. The question is whether we'll be prepared for what's coming and whether we'll maintain our faith when the world around us seems to be falling apart. And here's the most sobering realization. Most people contributing to these trends have no idea they're fulfilling prophecy. They think they're solving problems, promoting progress, building a better world. The bankers implementing digital currencies think they're increasing efficiency. The politicians promoting global governance think they're preventing conflicts. The technologists building surveillance systems think they're improving security. Even many of the people resisting these trends are doing so for the wrong reasons, with the wrong methods, which leads us to a disturbing paradox. Here's something that will challenge everything you think you know about opposing the Antichrist. Much of what people call resistance is actually accelerating his rise to power. Every time someone tries to fight these prophetic developments using worldly methods, politics, activism, they create more chaos, more division, more demand for the strong leadership that the Antichrist will provide. But it does mean we need to understand what kind of resistance actually matters in the end times.
To find out, click here.